Welcome to Something to Talk About, a lively hour of open discussion covering, well, anything and everything. Hosted by Stuart Sachs, husband, father, and military veteran, and Vaughn Loick, wife, mother, and best-selling author. Now, Something to Talk About. Stuart and Vaughn.
Well, welcome to another edition of Something to Talk About. And it was good to hear the music again and the announcer announcing the show. Unfortunately, Vaughn couldn't make it today. She is tied up. No. She's substitute teaching, and that's the caveat to her co-hosting the show, is that when there's an opportunity for her to teach our little kiddos, she needs to take advantage of it because they need her.
Do you know what she's teaching? What grade?
I don't know what grade she's teaching this week.
Oh, we'll have to find out.
Yeah, we'll find out from her. So
let's dance.
So I have co-host number 2, always in the wings, and Lauren Sachs is in the studio, in the house with us.
Always number 2, next to Vaughn, next to the dog, next to the kids.
So you're the Avis in my life, right? Because Avis, their slogan was "We try harder," because they've always been number 2 next to Hertz.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
After 45 years, I'm not.
No,
it is what it is.
I ain't going anywhere.
It is what it is.
You know, but glad to have everybody with us. Hello and welcome to a new year again. We've had a couple of shows this year already, but I hope everybody's making the most of 2020.
Can you believe it?
The Roaring 20s.
Did you know that when you sign a document now, anything that you sign, instead of like doing 1/ whatever the date is, 19,
yeah,
don't do /20.
Oh, really? Are they saying that it may not be legal?
Yeah, and because it could be 2019, it could have been 2018. You have to do 2020.
Okay, so now you have to put down. Today is what, 1/17?
What's today?
Yeah, the 17th.
Look at our watches. Yes.
So today would be 1/17/2020.
Correct. That's what I've been doing.
And it's interesting that you say that, because when you fill out forms, very often on the computer, it'll tell you to put in the month in 2 digits, the day in 2 digits, and the year in 4 digits.
Right.
So that's good to know.
Makes sense.
So everybody,
you didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
For sure you would know that.
No, see, I'm always learning, and you're always a teacher, because that's what you studied.
Not really. I was going to go for library science. I don't put that.
Oh, really?
Really?
Well, I thought you were going to be a teacher, because you were a teacher's aide for a while.
I wanted to be a teacher when I was a little girl. But no.
You didn't want to be a ballerina or something?
Ballerina? No, I wanted to be a teacher.
Oh, I think first I wanted to be a fireman.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, see, I didn't know that about you either.
Yeah. No, and I burned my fingers on a hot pan
and
once.
that was it?
And I said, no, firefighting is not my calling.
So then after that, what were you?
A cowboy.
A cowboy?
Yeah, I want to be a cowboy.
You lived in the city.
No, but stop and think, because you've got the picture. When I was young, I took tap dancing. My mother, when I was young, we didn't have all this video stuff and all.
Yeah.
You did stuff like tap dancing or sports or that's what you did. I took theater, the Jack and Jill Players in Chicago, But I was tap dancing, and I was doing a tap dancing number, and I got to wear these chaps.
Right.
And
it was a great costume.
Little pistol on the belt
and the hat.
And the hat.
You were decked out.
Who would have known that back when I was maybe 6 years old, 7 years old, and I was tap dancing in a cowboy outfit, that one day I would live in Texas. Yeehaw!
So that means now we have to get a horse.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Good.
I try to ride a horse sometime. But
I know you would like land.
Huh?
I know you would like land.
Yes. It would be nice to have some land. But then you would say, hey, get out there and cut the grass.
Yeah.
Go mow it.
Yep. Yep, I would. So we're not going there.
No.
And what would we do with all that land? Although Mark has land now.
Yeah, and
I wonder what the two of them do.
Well,
when they're out in
right
the
now,
middle of
Mark's
nowhere.
land is under snow.
Well,
You know, it's under cover.
Yeah.
So once the spring comes up, then he's going to have to get out there on that John Deere, and he's going to have to start plowing and mowing and
Does
moving.
Mark have a John Deere?
I don't know if he's got one yet, but he probably will.
Well, the John Deeres, you can get the shoveler. The blade comes off.
Oh, sure, yeah, and it's like the skill
Yeah.
drills.
Yeah, you take them apart, yeah.
Yep, you just take off the mowing thing,
yeah.
put a plow on the front, and now he can plow his driveway.
Well, isn't he
or
plowing
till-
now?
Oh, he'll till his soil
Till his soil.
and all.
But isn't he plowing now?
No, he's not plowing.
Well, if the snow is there.
Because he's here.
Well,
Kim is there. Maybe Kim's plowing the snow. But no. Well, a week ago, we almost had to plow snow here in Frisco.
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it?
It was bizarre.
It really was.
It was so bizarre to see snow on the ground one day, 24 hours after it was 70 degrees. And we had the snow on the ground for a couple of days, and we've had a couple of days where it's been a little cool. And what was it? Yesterday they set an all-time record of 81.
No, that wasn't yesterday because it
Day
was
before
raining.
yesterday?
It was the
probably
day before. And by
Yeah.
the way, that was not snow. That was
Well,
like
for-
sugar
well,
powder that
for
came from the air.
Texas,
According,
for Dallas,
yeah,
it was.
yeah, compared to what you see up in Michigan.
But it
Because
was-
I had friends that tried to build a snowman out of it, and it would look like a bunch of like snow ice out of it. It wasn't really snow. It was like they put powder and sugar together and got it wet.
Well, yeah, either that or what you do is you just zoom in on it so it makes it look like it's an 8-foot tall snowman when actually it's only about 6-7
Did you
inches.
see the picture of the people that saved their snowballs and put them in the freezer? It was on Facebook.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now those are some people with a lot of time on their hands.
Well, but it was 1 minute it was raining because I looked out at like 5 a.m. or whatever, and it was fine, nothing. And 6 o'clock in the morning, I looked out again, and there it was.
Yes.
It was quick.
And when the dog went outside and
Oh, the
she
poor
saw it,
puppy.
she looked back up and said, "I'll hold it till tomorrow." Don't make me go
But then
out
she
in
did-
this.
that she didn't matter. Well, hey, it's her fault. I bought her boots. She wouldn't
Yes, I know.
she would go out. Hey.
Folks, that's another picture to see a small dog with boots on.
Well, but their paws get cold. Did you ever notice your dog's paws sometimes when it's cold in the house?
When it's cold in the house,
Yeah, you should go feel her paws. I'm not kidding you. Oh, we better switch this conversation.
welcome to something to talk about.
Well, this
And I'm sure that there's some veterinarians out there saying, "Are you kidding me?"
seriously, her paws are really cold sometimes.
So you have to pick her up and just give her a nice little hug, or wrap her up in a
I
little
do.
Afghan.
I do. Yeah.
And she says to you, "Leave me alone.
alone,
Just,
yeah.
just give me a treat. Let me
Yeah.
lie down and take a nap.
Right.
Or
So,
put on the fireplace."
so I think
That's
we've
a-
been dissed. What is
Di-
that?
who?
Dissed?
Dissed.
Dissed.
Oh, by whom?
Our guest today.
Oh, yeah. We were supposed to have some guests coming in today to share a conversation, but I mean, we can carry on the conversation because honestly, I had posted that in the newspaper last week, and it's been on the radio, that there seems to be almost a nationwide critical shortage
Yeah.
of blood, especially type O blood, and there's been appeals in from a lot of the hospitals, especially, and I don't know why they say it's cyclical, that almost every year after the holidays, that there is a blood shortage, and I was hoping that if our guest Linda does show up, that she could share some insight as to why, like every January or December or January every year, that there is some kind of a
Yeah, I
shortage.
didn't know either. I mean, I know we've had terrible flu and some deaths, but I wouldn't think that was.
But in
part of it.
in starting to look into this whole subject, it was interesting. I wasn't aware that the average person has between 10 and 12 pints of blood
In their
in
body.
their system at any one time. If you get a severe cut and you lose some blood, if they stop the bleeding and suture up the cut, within a matter of an hour or two, you're back up to your 10 or 12 pints of blood. If you give a pint of blood, some people say, well, I don't. It might make me a little anemic,
and I don't feel so good after I do.
Or so they say to just drink plenty of fluids before and after, have a good meal, avoid caffeine in soft drinks or coffee prior to giving blood. But when you give a pint of blood, it's not going to leave you lightheaded, and it's not going to leave you, anemic. Your body will reproduce that lost pint of blood within a matter of hours.
It's amazing.
Now, you're not supposed to go out and do any kind of strenuous exercise afterwards, but it's something that is beneficial. Stop and think about it. People in accidents, and it happens every day on highways all across America. These people are in accidents. They're transported to hospitals and all, and very often need blood transfusions. We have a lot of people that have sustained illnesses where the white blood cells are eating the red blood cells. They need sometimes daily transfusions and all. This eats up the blood supply very quickly. The other huge area is our veterans who are in harm's way. Now, a lot of them are overseas, but many are still stateside and all. They are also in need of blood in their blood banks.
Yes, but what we've been bringing men home, and we don't have as many out there fighting, and so I
but they're
don't
in
think
hospitals, and so they
and I
have
don't
the
think
need
that
too.
would be the reason for the shortage.
Well, it's simply need. And there are blood banks in almost every major city of medium or large size that try to maintain a level of blood, platelets, various blood types. Sometimes the shortage, they'll put out a notice that there is a shortage of AB negative blood that they need because they see that is being depleted.
Right.
And so they're going after a target audience. But the important thing for people to remember is that even if you have a common blood type, like O, which is a universal blood type, if you donate blood, but they need a pint of AB negative, they sometimes they have a trading system.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Excuse me, between hospitals, between blood banks, where if one hospital is depleted in one, they can take universal blood and send it to another source. And
I would suppose that they would have to.
In order to get it. But it doesn't take very long. Usually it's about 20 minutes. Sometimes there are established brick and mortar blood banks. Sometimes they are mobile blood banks. I haven't seen it so much around here, but when we were in Florida and we lived in the Florida Keys, almost every weekend or even during the week there was a mobile blood bank that was traveling around. It would be in front of the Publix supermarket. It would be in front of a major
Everywhere.
bank.
I was going to mention that. Yeah, I think because we were more in a remote area, and there weren't a lot of blood banks down there, so they brought the bus to where we were.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. You don't see them here. Although, doing some research on our guests that we were supposed to have today, they mentioned a big company. They do have the mobile buses to go out, and a big company can ask for them to come to their place of work.
Right.
They mentioned something about parties, if you wanted them to come for a party and have the people at your party to give blood, which I would never have thought of.
They used to have premiums. Sometimes they would give T-shirts or other items if you went and gave blood.
Yes.
I mean, the idea is not to give blood because they're having some kind of a premium. They're giving a set of barbecue tools or something. So you say, oh, I'll go give blood to get a free set of barbecue tools. You give blood for the sake of helping your fellow human being who may be in need.
Right.
And the best thing is that all the blood banks are full and they have enough blood for their needs. And also there is not a call. But when there is a call, it's usually because there is a need. Look, anytime that there is a flood, an earthquake, any kind of a natural disaster, look what's going on with forest fires and everything around in Australia as well as in
that's true everywhere.
California.
Yeah.
there is a critical need for blood donations whenever there is
That's
a
true.
tragedy.
That's true.
And you can't wait until the tragedy in order to
Right. It's
now
too late.
get the donations.
Yeah.
You have to play ahead of it. And so there are places like the Carter Blood Center
Mm-hmm.
here in North Texas, that their whole job is just to collect blood and to fill those banks so that they are full when the need arises. And we all hope that there will not be a need that arises, but it's
Yeah.
more when rather than if.
It is. It is. I feel badly because I really had some questions to ask, and we'll just have to put off for another show.
Yeah, if you are interested in giving blood, you can always start with the American Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
They will send you to wherever the local collection agencies are, whether they are established agencies or very often the hospitals. You can just call the hospitals and say, do you take blood for your blood bank? And I think most of them do. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think that's also a good starting point because they will say, well, we don't, but here in North Texas, maybe in Plano or McKinney or whatever, there is a place where you can either physically go or you can go online. They'll tell you where you can go online to find out where a blood mobile is going to be. So if there is one nearby. Now, one of the questions that I had on my list, is, are there restrictions for who can give blood?
Yes.
And there are restrictions.
Yes, there are.
You have to be a minimum of 17 years old in order to give blood. There is no upper age limit. If you are in good health.
Well, that's the key word.
Yeah,
The key words.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
But in between, let's say a woman is pregnant. She probably is not a candidate for giving blood. If you have traveled outside of the country within
Yes.
in
Right.
as little as 30 days, as
Correct.
much as a year. If you just got back from a cruise to the Greek islands 6 months ago, but you
You
want to
can't.
give blood, they'll probably tell you to
Right.
come back in 6 months.
Well, they did because when we would do our cruises, when we went to Europe, and I remember you coming back to the States and you wanted to give blood.
Right.
You weren't allowed.
And I believe that you can give blood every 90 days. It's 90 or 120 days. I'm not exactly
like that.
sure. But when we lived in Florida, I did it regularly.
Yes, you did.
And
And it's interesting. It's I never knew when you were giving blood that you were supposed to be drinking so much water. And when you
prior
go prior to
yes, yeah.
when you go for blood tests, and they say you're supposed to fast, but this has nothing to do with the water. I always thought it did. I didn't think you were supposed to have anything by mouth.
It's
You need the water for them to be able to find the veins to take the blood from. And I never knew that.
well,
It's only been the
and
last
like
few
me,
years
if
I found
you're
that out.
a little heavy, you're a little overweight and everything, it makes it a little more difficult to find those veins.
Yeah. So you should always have water. I never knew that. But now, when you would give blood, I remember you could go online and you could find out what your type was. Because there was a point where I think, well, you didn't forget, but I had forgotten what blood type I was. And
Yeah.
I waited a few days after I gave blood and I could go online and see the type. Now, you can ask them to do a cholesterol reading. And they will take your blood pressure when you're there giving
Well,
blood.
they usually do that
So-
anyway. That's a prerequisite before
yes.
you give blood.
But you can have your own profile, and you can keep track of it. You can keep going back to this profile, or when you go back to give blood many times, you can keep track of your cholesterol, ask them to do a cholesterol check. I
Yeah.
never really knew that.
Yeah, and before you start, they usually prick your finger and they take a
Yeah.
little sample because they want to just see if there's any kind of medication that might be in your system that you
Yeah.
can't have. If you are on medications, you have to tell them what it is. If
Absolutely.
it's just been a baby aspirin or a blood thinner
Right.
or so, that's usually not as
Right.
much of an issue. But
Right.
if you are on any kind of a medication for some kind of a disorder,
Yeah.
that may affect the properties of the blood that they're collecting, and they may say either you can't give blood or you have to come back.
Right.
And I mean,
yeah, I understand that.
You know, while you don't want to have to show up and then be rejected, you have to be
Yeah, it's
thankful for the
very
fact that they
dangerous.
have that kind of a process
Absolutely.
because it keeps it pure. Because we all know over the last so many decades, and all there have been a lot of cases of HIV that have not been caused through any kind of sexual orientation or sexual contact. Has been through blood transfusions. We lost a good friend
Yeah.
to because of that.
Yeah.
Had HIV because of a bad blood transfusion.
Well, and it does say on their website that even after you give blood, they will send that out just to make sure. They will test it again to make sure that that blood is okay.
Right.
So
And
they
dispose
have
of it
to.
if it is
Yeah,
if it isn't.
they have to.
Yep. Yeah.
You can't take a chance with something like that.
Yeah. Well, we could pause for a break and we'll check in and
Is that
just
that
see
time?
if maybe our friends got waylaid on the highway, and all. But we've taken sufficient notes to, I think, help people
Yeah.
understand what a critical need there is for blood donations. And
Yeah.
it's there's always a good time to start, and it really doesn't hurt that much. When they put the needle in, that's about the only time
Yeah,
you
that's-
sit back,
yeah.
you relax.
And then you get cookies and juice afterwards.
Yeah, you listen to music sometimes.
Now, sometimes you can get paid
Yes.
for your blood.
Well, and in specific areas like plasma, when they're trying
Yes.
to plasma.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that a little bit after we
Okay.
come back from the break. So
Okay.
we'll come back with more of something to talk about.
3, 2, 1. KVGIRadio.com.
Y'all really just opened my bubble and just.
KVGI Radio brings you conversation and entertainment. Be sure to follow us on social media. Who streams the best talk shows? We do.
You're listening to KVGIRadio.com. Streaming live from the KVGI studios in Frisco, Texas. Live without limits.
Welcome to Something to Talk About, a lively hour of open discussion covering, well, anything and everything. Hosted by Stuart Sachs, husband, father, and military veteran, and Vaughn Loick, wife, mother, and best-selling author. Now, Something to Talk About. Stuart and Vaughn.
And we are back live and without limits here on KVGI Radio. You're in beautiful Frisco, Texas. Well, beautiful compared to what? I think it's still drizzling outside.
Well, it's
but,
warm.
Yes. But Vaughn, again, is not with us. Lauren is sitting in as the co-host. And during the little break and throughout the drizzle, we found Linda Goelzer.
I was waiting on the doorstep with wet hair and like a puppy, and they said, come on in.
And, Murphy's Law kicked in this morning because she was here looking for us, and we were also looking for her. But we passed like two ships passing in the night, and so she was here. But
she's
wasn't
here now,
up here.
right in front of us.
She's right here.
Yes.
And now what she can do is either confirm or refute all of the stuff that we talked about in the first segment, because you are public relations with the Carter Blood Centers.
Carter Blood Care. Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things we started to talk about, and you can let the audience know, Carter Blood Center is an independent blood collecting business,
Yes.
correct? And if people want to give blood, they can go to one of the Carter Blood Centers,
Yes.
or you have mobile units.
Yes, we do.
That also. Otherwise, if somebody wanted to give blood, can they go into a hospital?
No.
Okay, all right.
Go,
no.
go blood center.
Go
to-
blood
to
centers
Carter.
or mobile. Hospitals do not collect blood for patients. They collect your blood samples for tests, but they don't collect blood for patients, not
Good to
in the
know,
Dallas
because
Fort Worth area.
all right, so that was something that we guessed at, and we were wrong. I remember we were talking a little bit about the fact that we moved here from South Florida, and they have a large network of mobile blood trucks, and they would show up at the
Everywhere.
yeah, the banks,
Yeah.
the
Grocery
the
store.
grocery stores,
Yeah, everywhere.
and they would be there for an entire day, and people would
Yes.
just come in and give blood,
Yes.
and that's basically what you're doing in North Texas.
Yes. We have North, Central, and East Texas, so we have about a 58-county area in Texas. Yes.
Huge.
Wow.
That's
so
huge.
It requires a lot of people donating blood to keep our 200 medical facilities provided with the blood that they need for their patients. Hospitals in some cities still collect blood, but it's usually a pretty small amount. It's not like they're trying to supply their whole communities. But in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there are not any hospitals that collect blood for their patients. So we are the blood collector and provider for about 90% of the healthcare facilities in Dallas-Fort Worth. And then I believe all of them in Central Texas, and then in our East Texas area, we provide the majority of those hospitals as well. So when people donate blood with Carter Blood Care, they are giving at a center or on a mobile bus. And mostly we are collecting on the buses, mostly it's whole blood. There are some blood drives where we do collect what we call through automation. We collect a specific part of the blood, say platelets or plasma or just red cells, and we return the rest of the blood back to the person. So that's when we're trying to collect larger quantities of something like platelets, because one person can donate enough platelets for 1, 2, or 3 patients, but the small amount of platelets that we obtain off of a whole blood donor is just a small amount, and we have to put those together to get a whole dose for a patient. So it's more efficient for us to collect platelets on automation so that we can get larger amounts.
Now, there are people that are listening to this show from all over the country, and Carter is specifically in this area. And you go what, as far north as the Oklahoma border?
Almost. We are in
Okay.
Paris. That's probably, and then Denton, and some right up there, right on the line.
All right, so west to about Denton, and then how far south?
far south as
58 counties.
down
Wow.
Waco and south.
Okay.
There a little bit. So not San Antonio. There's a community blood center that begins in that area. So we are a nonprofit community blood center, so we do focus on our local areas. We're not collecting blood for other parts of the country.
Okay.
However, all the community blood centers have the opportunity when we're short in our own areas, or the times when weather hinders an area from being able to collect. There is a what I call a hub and spoke system, if you will, whereby we can communicate needs to each other and then find out where support might become available.
So if there were a disaster in, say, South Texas or in Louisiana or so, you would be able to help them with their need in times of a disaster?
Yes, as long as we have what we need.
Yes.
Right. So,
So-
you don't deplete your supply.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's so dangerous when we don't collect enough blood in our areas, because our own community probably doesn't realize the ramifications of that. Not only would it hinder medical care being performed in our own area, but if something were to happen in other parts of the country where we're needed, we would not be able to help as well. People don't understand, I think, how much medical care relies on blood.
Yeah, you're right. You don't think about it.
Well,
You can't
we
even do
talked
a-
a little bit about that earlier. That sometimes it's basic medical needs. People who have diseases that require a weekly or a monthly transfusion.
Exactly.
Those of course you can depend on, because that's already like pre-charted by the physicians or so that
Not
we might need.
necessarily.
Okay.
So the reason I say that is, if you're a person living with sickle cell disease, for
Okay.
instance, you definitely might have regular ongoing transfusions. We hope that they do. That's usually a really great medical protocol for sickle cell patients. But if a sickle cell patient has a transfusion scheduled, they don't always, but if they have one scheduled, many times those patients require blood from donors who have been pre-tested to know that they
Yes.
have the qualities in their blood that are appropriate for those patients.
Yes.
They usually have so many antibodies they've developed to the many numbers of blood transfusions they've received. So now they're trying to find donors that are exact matches for these patients. Those donors are not always, and plus the blood
Around.
usually has to be 7 days or less old. So
It's a tall order.
it is a tall order, and we have certain people in our donor communications department, the people who call and try to schedule donors. There are people who do nothing but call for special patients or special donations, which that would fall under. So if the blood isn't on the shelf, whether it's for those patients or not, we're having to call through our list of people that we know have been tested to
And
match
we were
those.
talking about this before you came in. We know that there's a blood shortage. Is that correct? And why is there a blood shortage?
Because there's no blood donors. So
It's as simple as that.
And is that cyclical? Do you find that there are certain times of the year
that's what I
where
was gonna
that
ask.
need increases
It
or
used-
decreases?
It used to be. It used to be late November through late January, possibly February, and then it used to be summers, June through August. And we have been in I think this is our fourth appeal since August this year.
Oh, wow.
Wow,
That's
just
a
since
lot.
last August, so
That's
that's
a
six.
lot.
A little over 6 months. Wow.
We don't-
And can you attribute that to anything? Is it because of an increase in, say, highway accidents? It's just
Just
it's
No.
such a.
I think
that's the
long-term-
mind-boggling thing
well,
is.
long term, what we in the industry believe is happening is that as our donors age out, the majority of all the donors in the country are people 50 and over, World War II era and baby boomer generation, people who have been giving blood for many, many years, and they're beginning to age out, whether it's
Yep.
because of medications they're on, illnesses. Cancer is predominantly an older person's disease, 65 and older. Don't like to say that, but yeah. It's
No.
not so old anymore. But it is primarily an older person's disease. So oncology issues happen. And not only do those persons begin to need blood more than they might be able to give it,
yeah.
but there are not enough younger people stepping up to continue this wonderful habit and wonderful
Yeah.
altruistic.
Well, and life expectancies are increasing also.
Because we
So-
have blood and because we're able to do so many procedures that we can do because of blood.
So is there a campaign out there that you're trying to reach the millennials, the younger generation, to let them know what this need is and what a responsibility it is? And we talked about it in our first segment. It's not a big deal.
It is really not a big
It
deal.
takes 20 to 30 minutes of your time to sit down, listen to some music, have your blood drawn by very, very capable people. It's a very easy process. You have some juice and cookies and all, and you go on your
You're
way.
Right.
And your body replenishes the blood that you
Very
just gave quickly.
Very quickly. And what you're describing, Stuart, is mostly the whole blood process. And we tell people to allow an hour just because the screening process and all of that.
Well, you may have to maybe wait in line because
Right.
they can
We would love that problem. We do occasionally see
well,
that.
well, the buses usually
Right.
are set up for what,
Right.
four people at a
Right.
time.
Right. So there can be a little bit of a wait. We also have a process in place now called Quick Screen, whereby donors can use their mobile phones, their desktop, a laptop, portable device, and they can do their medical questionnaire in advance. They
Oh,
must do
excellent.
it on the day they're donating,
Okay.
but it won't last. You won't
Right.
stay in the system
Yes.
that long if you don't come in that day. But if you choose to, you may go on and do that process ahead of time. So at least when you're there, you the phlebotomist
that time.
only needs to go through the questions that pop up as something they need to ask further questions on, and other than that, you're ready to go on to the temperature check and pulse and how much.
Did
blood
you say
have.
is that a mobile app now or so?
There is a mobile app for it. The
All right.
mobile app is actually a Carter Blood Care app, and then Quick Screen is a part of that. So you
Okay.
can do it on your phone. You can do it, from your desktop, and also from any other kind of portable device
And do you
that gets internet.
Do you try to market yourselves to the corporations, to big business, to even small businesses, so you can take that mobile blood
Yes.
Yeah.
center?
We have
around?
a team of consultants that spend the majority of their time trying to either get people to host a blood drive or following up on and helping with the drives that are already set up. So it is an ongoing process for them. We depend greatly on our high schools. You can only imagine there are, and actually about 20 to 25% of our annual collections comes from high school blood drives. Now, that's not just high
Okay.
schoolers, it's
No.
teachers, faculty.
Right.
Well, and having said that, the minimum age to give blood
16
is 16 now. Okay,
with parents' consent, and
Okay.
at 17 and older, you may
all
donate
right. So you're basically
independently.
talking junior and
Okay.
seniors in high school.
Mostly,
Oh, okay.
mostly. And we know that the first reason people in high school give blood is they're getting out of class. We
It's
know
as simple
that.
as
Okay.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
And if it
great.
works,
and that,
fine.
Right, and
Yeah.
it does. But we also find most of the time when they do give that very first time, they feel so good about themselves that they will come back, usually at least a second time while they're in high school. Where we lose them is when they
Go
get
to
out.
college, yeah.
So whether they go to work somewhere or they go off to college, many times they're leaving their hometown, which means we don't have a way to contact them. So,
But
you
if
know-
you can instill in those young minds that when you go off to college, wherever you go to college, chances are there's a blood bank in the
oh,
college
certainly,
town too.
Certainly.
And I think it's fair to say that sometimes a lot of the need for the blood is among the teenage community because of auto accidents. That's higher among the younger drivers.
Well, we'd like
sports
to
injuries
we'd like
or so?
to think that,
Yeah.
but it's really not true. The majority of the blood actually does go to oncology patients and surgical issues. And the other thing that some people don't think about is even though we have so much minimally invasive surgery that happens today, there are many ways to perform surgery and treat things minimally invasively where very little blood loss occurs and much is never used there. But think about this. The blood must be there.
Yes.
It has to be in the OR. You cannot puncture someone's skin and not have blood available, because if something goes wrong or you
Right.
find something different, you must have the blood
Now,
available.
if someone is going to have major surgery and they want to give their own blood before the surgery, are they giving it to the hospital or can they give it to you?
Well, first let's talk about that
That's
concept
a
in
good question.
general.
Yeah.
It is a good question. I'm going to take the liberty to say it's old school thought.
Oh, okay.
It's really not necessary to do that anymore, and it's very
Oh.
expensive. And there's also a thought in some cases where some patients end up not needing blood
Mm-hmm.
because they have good iron levels, and even if they lose a little bit of blood, the doctors say, they don't really need a transfusion. They'll pick back up.
Yeah.
So you might end up giving blood that you didn't need to lose in the first place. And
Good thought.
and you're giving whole blood when you might not really need all those parts. Like
Okay.
maybe you have post-surgery, they say, oh, we're going to give you some platelets to kind of help stop bleeding. So that's why we
Okay.
divide blood into these different components, so that doctors can make the mixture of what that person needs, whether it's to assist with more oxygen and iron, or to help stop bleeding, to help form clots better.
Okay.
Okay. So it's really, the blood supply is so safe today. People do not realize how safe it is.
Well, it would have to be.
It is very safe.
But
and
did you say
I would
earlier-
not hesitate to get a transfusion myself. I just,
Okay.
if
Well,
it-
it's
No.
become more part of the process.
well, it's
now,
actually become there's been patient blood management going on for many years now, which means it's helpful to the blood supply because they're not often using as much per procedure. In the old days, they might have said, "Oh, we need 6 units for this procedure," and now science tells us 3 is fine.
Which helps the blood bank because
right.
you can maintain
And it helps
your levels.
patients. So there's already a process in place whereby hospitals are really looking at medical protocols for the use of transfusion. So if a doctor tells you need a transfusion, or someone you love needs a transfusion, they're basically saying there's a greater risk for their health if we don't give this transfusion than if we do.
Okay.
Because nobody really wants to just give blood to someone. I mean, it is a risky procedure, but it's more risky not because you might get some infection. It's the whole process of, we have to make sure the blood matches. We have to make sure your body doesn't respond adversely to something unexpectedly. It's live tissue going to a live human, and so there is always a risk there. But the blood supply and the inventory of blood available is very, very safe. It's safer than it's ever been.
Did you say earlier that there is a shelf life for a donation?
Yes, there is a shelf life for blood. Red blood cells will live 42 days in refrigeration, and that's partially because of solutions now that are mixed with that blood in the blood bags that they go in, so it extends the life. Without that, it'd be 21 days.
Oh,
So
Interesting.
right,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
we're extending the life already, and 42 days is not long when we're
No.
talking about, especially type O's that are used every day, the majority of the time. And we also know that platelets are only 5 days. There is a new bacterial testing process that can allow hospitals to extend them up to 7 days. But again, we don't really count on that. Those cells live in air temperature, and they are rotated all the time to keep them from clotting together. That's what they like to do. And plasma is frozen, and it can be frozen for up to a year. But those platelets are like gold. They pretty much are in the door, out the door. And red cells, of course, right now are going in and out the door very quickly because we just don't have a large supply built up. But we like to have 2 to 3 days supply, and most people go, really? That's all? That's
not
pretty
much.
much it. We're lucky
Wow.
if we're maintaining a solid
That's
3-day
amazing.
supply.
Amazing. Now, the person that takes your blood
Mhm.
is called a phlebotomist.
Phlebotomist.
I'm curious, what is the education necessary?
We do on-the-job training. We pay them during their training, But it's a technician job, and they have to learn almost 100 standard operating procedures that are required by the FDA, and then some that are required by us. You can do things differently than the FDA as long as it's not less stringent, if that makes sense. So they have a lot of things they have to learn to do exactly the same way every day, every time. And so that requires someone to really care about what they're doing, and they have to be attentive to detail. And then they also have to give good customer service. So you want someone who's focused and going to do things right, but you also need someone who can help people feel comfortably. But you're learning how to stick people, and it's different than just drawing blood from like your doctor's office does. That's a very small needle, and they're just taking a little bit. This is a very large needle, and they have to know what they're doing.
So could it be a year before somebody is comfortable and good enough? Is it 2 years?
12 weeks.
12
weeks is training. Oh.
And part of that training, too, is the screening. That whole screening process is really important. That's stage one of making sure we have a healthy, safe blood supply, is the effectiveness of the questionnaire and the screening tools. So they're not only learning, the actual technical process, but they're learning all those SOPs, and then that screening, what kind of things they have to follow up with on the questionnaire. They're having to remember. I mean, they do have all the notes and stuff with them, but if you had to look up something every single time, so they're learning, what are the parts of the world where if someone travels, they have to be deferred for X amount of time.
Right.
And
We were talking about that too.
so it is a very challenging job, but we have some wonderful people that come. They must be 18, I believe, is the youngest we hire phlebotomists, but they surprisingly, people who come from even the restaurant industry make really good phlebotomists. They're accustomed to shifting schedules a lot.
Sterilizations.
Working with
techniques.
the public.
But doing it quickly and efficiently and following a process. Almost every restaurant has a real orderly process by which they do what they do. So we find that those folks make really good phlebotomists. People who come out of the military make really good phlebotomists. We have a lot of veterans that work in our office place anyway, because I think there's a lot of what we do that just appeals to them.
Well, they're used to an SOP.
They're used to processes. They do them very well. They work well in teams. They focus on a mission. So if you're a mission-minded person, and we have recently done employee surveys, and the one thing that always comes out very strongly and unifies us, I believe, is that everyone believes in the mission we're doing, no matter what role they're playing in it.
Wow. We're getting down already.
We less than 2 minutes left.
But before she's gone, can you give your website and your phone number?
Yes, it's carterbloodcare.org, so carterbloodcare.org.
Okay.
And then our phone number, if you want to call and make appointments, 800-366 2834. And you can text that number as well. So if you're a person that prefers to text, you can have that conversation to set up an appointment, and we can.
But
send
I would
you
encourage
reminders.
people to go to that website and everything, because there's a lot of questions that can be answered right there. For instance, what are the age limits?
Right.
Both the young side and the old side. If you've traveled outside the country, which you mentioned, there's limitations there. The one quick question I wanted to verify was, you can give blood how often?
When you give whole blood, you have to wait 56 days. So
56
it's the
days,
57th day that you could give. So every 57 days, up to 6 times a year. That's really hard to get that in unless you're giving right on the.
Right.
But platelets you may give up to 26 times a year, and those are we prefer they're given every 14 days or so, but they can be given every 7 days. We just don't have that many platelet donors, so we really don't want them giving their 26 times away at the beginning of the year.
So the time invested to give whole blood or platelets, is that about the same?
No.
Okay.
Platelets is can be up to 2 hours.
Okay.
It's very seldom that, but we tell people it could be that long. And again, part of that's the screening and getting them
Mhm.
ready, getting on the machine and all that stuff. But it's so highly, highly important.
Well,
Well,
Linda,
we have to
thank
have
you very,
that.
very much for joining us and sharing the information. But the most important thing, folks, is to remember it's your duty to give blood,
Absolutely.
because there may be a time in your life where you
Need it.
need it. And it's good to know that you have paid it forward. So
Right.
Carter Blood's
Blood care.
care.org. Go online. Again, Linda Goelzer, thank you very, very much
Thank
for
you,
taking the time to
Stuart.
be with us.
Thank you very much.
That'll do it for Something to Talk About. Join us again next week.